Welcome in. I'm Vox Sinistra, and I'm here with a special guest today. We have Roland from the great Canadian synthpop darkwave duo Violentene, and I have had the pleasure of releasing a remix of one of their tracks, Break the Silence, on the recent Strict Tempo compilation album, which some of you may have already heard. And today we're going to talk about the band, their history a bit, give you a little introduction to them, and then also dive into their last full EP release, which was called Human Drama, and it was released last year. And it is a great release, and I'm really excited to uh, have Roland here with us today. So, welcome in.
Hi, hi. Hello, how are you?
Hello.
Thanks
So,
for having us.
of course. So I'm going to dive right into a little bit of just general info about the band for those of you just tuning in, just wondering what's happening here. Uh, the new Violentine EP, Human Drama, came out October 20th, 2023, which was a little bit over a year ago now. Time flies. The release
It does.
sees Mvrijo and Roland M pushing their well-established lush atmospherics and vocal melodies to new heights, fusing dreamy synth and new wave and melancholic dark wave. The new release has been an intense labor of love and inspiration, the perfect antidote to the madness of the modern world and chaos, the perfect environment for trying to deconstruct the full meaning of life's chaos, the human drama of being fully alive. Coming off the success of 2021's Otherworld EP, the five tracks on human drama feel deeper, more fully realized than ever, a sharp laser focus on their own brand of ethereal, beat-driven, moody, and mysterious synth pop, with the ghosts of previous post-punk and dream pop influence never lurking too far away. Break the Silence started the singles and video rolling in November 2022, leading up to Thin Lines in September 2023, then pulling everything together for the full EP in October, along with the new tracks Eyes of the World, Never Fade, and Destiny Unknown. Many of the songs had their genesis as soundscapes with inspiration from old 80s synths in Roland's collection, written quickly in moments of clarity, then passed onto Mvrijo and ruminated over until a solid structure appeared, and definitely not overthought to keep the initial vibe and emotion intact and pure. So we're going to listen to that EP here in a bit, but we are going to talk about the band with Roland here from the band for a while first. And we're also going to listen to that remix that I mentioned also, which was a dance remix, sort of like with EBM vibes that JG Outsider from Spain did. And that was released a couple months ago now on Strict
Hmm.
Tempo, my label, and everything. But by now, really, event series, video, podcast, we're just doing it all. Um, but yeah, so welcome in, Roland. Um, do you want to tell us first, just like how Violentine started? How did you get started as a band? Like, how was this whole concept initiated?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So when my last band, Politique, ended in, I guess it was 2012, I was sort of like at a crossroads, like as to where I wanted to go. That was more of a synth, well, kind of a synth influenced new wave, indie rock kind of thing, and we were a four piece, so four real people playing real instruments. So I kind of wanted to get away from that sort of standard, traditional format and get back into some more electronic stuff and some of the shoegaze stuff that I'd been doing years prior, like 20 years ago, with some other projects. So Politique ended, and then Violentine was born out of the ashes of that in about, I guess it was 2016, so like 9 years ago now. And so we released our first EP, Denial, in 2017 after I'd written a bunch of songs over in the interim. And so that EP and the EP that followed that, Phantom Youth, were done with vocalist Danny Marie out of New York City. So we were doing this sort of a long distance collab, myself being in Ottawa, Canada, and Danny being in New York City. And so we did two EPs together, which we were pretty proud of and really enjoyed that whole process. But I really wanted to explore working with somebody locally that I could work with in a more hands-on situation, and the idea also being that we could play live, which was too hard to pull together, me being in Canada and Danny being in the States. So I connected with Mary Jo in God, when was that? 2019. Everything worked out. We hit it off, and we had similar vibes and similar influences, and we liked the direction that we wanted to go in. And so yeah, we've been working together ever since. So it's been about 5 years.
Okay, so you didn't actually know Mary Jo before you started the project. It was just like a music
Yeah,
listing or something, or like a mutual friend, or
yeah. I think I put a posting on a musician's wanted online site, and yeah, it might have even been, I think it was Kijiji or something. Anyways, it was totally random, and I'd waited and waited and got a
I don't
bunch
know
of
that one.
responses.
It must be a
It's
Canadian
sort
thing.
Yeah, it's a Canadian thing. It's sort of like a Craigslist, but it's like a basically a musician's online connection site. And yeah, it just wasn't happening, wasn't finding anybody. And then she came along, sent me some demos, and the vocals sounded great. She was digging, the direction of what we were trying to do. And yeah, it just seemed like a good fit. And yeah, we right away after meeting, we just started writing, came up with 5 songs and put together the first EP that we did together, which was Otherworld in 2021.
Cool. So when did you actually start playing together?
Yeah, so we met, I think it was October 2019.
Oh, okay. Sorry if you already
Yeah,
said that.
yes, yeah, no, all good. And then, things got a little crazy because, as we all know, the pandemic started like 3 months after that. We were into full lockdown. So right away, we weren't actually able to physically get together to write. So it became, more of a remote thing. But we did our best, for a couple of years that ensued, because it was, as we all know, it was pretty difficult to do much. But yeah, the first EP was born out of that, and then we just continued writing directly after that, into 2023, and then released Human Drama, a couple of years after Otherworld. So it's sort of been like this ongoing, nonstop writing process.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has definitely paid off. So when did you start producing music, like just in life? Like you mentioned one of your previous projects, the like more new wave indie rock sort of band.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, anything
there's been
before that?
Yeah, before that, yeah, I've been playing and producing since I was a kid. Like I just like most, I just picked up guitar when I was a teenager, and then progressed into keyboards, MIDI, production, computers, all that stuff, just in hopes of being able to expand my musical palette. But I'd always been into like pretty trippy, washy guitar sounds, and then wanting to expand on that, got some samplers, got some computers, and then just started to trying to blend all those elements together. Um, you know, Pulling together darkwave vibes, shoegaze, dream pop, ambient stuff. Those are all things that were sort of interesting to me. Cinematic music, soundtrack music. But I'd always been really interested in working with female vocalists. So I think all the projects that I've been involved in. So I had an electronic thing called Liquefied in the 90s. We did 2 CDs, Politique, uh, 2 CDs with Politique, and then now Violentene. So it's always kind of followed this a similar path, but female vocalist has always been sort of front and center to all those projects.
Any particular reason for that?
I have no idea. No, it's always something that I do dig projects with male vocals. No, There's no bias there at all, but I've always really,
Right.
really been I've always been really drawn towards ethereal and ambient female vocals. So from an early age, being into things like Dead Can Dance, Cocteau Twins, Lush, Curve, the list goes on. Slow
Mhm.
Dive.
Okay. So it's just
Um,
like an aesthetic preference, really.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And so it becomes a bit of a challenge when you're trying to find somebody along those lines in a small market because we're basically between Montreal and Toronto. So while those are bigger markets and there's more people doing that kind of stuff, it's pretty tough to find musicians that are along those lines. And then Ottawa is quite a bit smaller, so it was kind of miraculous that I found somebody that was like MJ that was cool and into this style and could actually deliver the vocal chops as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I really like her vocals. So how would you say like the Ottawa music scene is like? I mean, yeah, how is the scene there?
it's a good scene. There's a lot of varied things going on, a lot of traditional rock stuff. There's things. It's a good scene. It's not huge. There's some interesting electronic bands going on here. Bands that are affiliated with Artifact Records. Yeah, it's good. It's small. It's not like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, but there's a lot of talent here, and there's a lot of incredibly talented artists doing pretty cool things. Definitely.
Cool. Um, can you describe your music with Violentene for us?
Sure. Yeah. I like to think of us as a synth. Maybe not. I hesitate to say synth pop because I feel like it's not a really poppy thing. It's synth driven. It's electronic. Um, I like to think that there's a lot of organic elements happening in there too, with the vocals, with the guitars, even though they're buried in the background a lot of times. Um, so not strictly electronic, but yeah, dreamy, synth driven, moody with some cinematic references. Hopefully, that's kind of like at least my perception of it. I have no idea if that comes across to anybody else, but that was the concept.
Yeah, I definitely hear it. Um, so can you describe it using three words, like just like adjectives? Like
Moody, mysterious, trippy.
that works.
Yeah,
Trippy is kind of an interesting one to use because I associate that with more like psychedelic or you know,
first thing
more,
that
I
came to
guess
mind.
there's
Yeah,
more ambient vibes to it though, too.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
and a lot of that sound I think comes from for some reason when I was in my 20s I started like being obsessed and collecting analog synths. So I just loved older tech over like digital modern keyboards. I loved old dusty keyboards that I would go around trying to find deals and scavenge things and repair things. And so a lot of these sounds were driven by like late 70s, early 80s analog synth technology, which has kind of there's a sound um, unto itself from when you work with that kind of technology. And there's some cool limitations too, because they can't do the things that, when you're working strictly within the box, there's a beauty of working with this old funky, technology that's a little wonky and, it doesn't quite sound right and the tunings can be a little off. There's something really cool about old vintage gear, I find.
Yeah, for sure. So you said you were like playing around with synths when you were young. Do you
Yeah.
remember some of like the first gear that you got your hands on, like the first synths you encountered?
Yeah, I had a friend who taught me like he was the studio guy, Benoit, and he taught me the ropes about MIDI, how computers worked with, connecting all this stuff together. And he sold me an old Moog, a Moog Rogue, which is somewhere in the back here. I can try to pull it out. So this guy here was my first synth that I bought from him, and it's like a circa 1980. mono synth from Moog, and I
We
was
saw a
hooked.
little bit of it.
Yeah, it's all connected with wires, so I didn't want to like
Oh,
yank it.
okay. Yeah, that's good
But
then.
yeah,
We saw
it's
the
a really
keys. That's what we got.
it's this tiny little thing, but it produces like the most intense, crazy, huge bass sounds and like ripping, crazy lead sounds that you've ever heard. Like you can produce techno on this thing, you can produce hard industrial, ambient sound, like anything Moog makes is just, stellar. So I was hooked after buying this cheap little $300 mono synth, and then like that kind of led me down this path of like, oh my God, I've got to buy everything I can find within reason. You know,
Yeah, for sure. What year about was that?
that was well, the synth is from 1980. And
Mm.
I think I got it from him sometime in the late 90s or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So you weren't making music like in the 80s.
I was not. No, no. I was still
Okay.
a kid. I've got two
Right.
older brothers that were listening to a lot of this kind of stuff in the 80s.
Mm.
And those records were always on, early Cure stuff, Kraftwerk, New Order,
Yeah.
Joy Division, Depeche Mode. So that kind of stuff was always on when I was a kid growing up. And so my brothers had a big influence on me with like they had some good taste back in the day. So they knew what was cool in the 80s. And it was always
Gotta
like
love that
perfect.
good, like cool sibling influence. I feel
Absolutely,
like
yeah, no,
that's how a lot of people get into alternative music, I think.
exactly. And it just kind of filters in because it's playing in the background and you don't know what it is. And then, you go looking through the records, it's like, wow, this is really bizarre, but this is really cool. I don't quite get it, but it's interesting and it kind of filters in that stuff always stuck for me.
Nice. Um, Random question. Were you ever a fan of trip hop?
Yeah, I liked a lot of trip hop. Yeah, when that was
When you
happening.
said trippy, I just thought about that for some reason in like the 90s. So
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
trippy
like
90s alternative trip
oh,
hop.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like obviously like Portishead and Massive Attack, Tricky, yeah, all that stuff
Mhm.
was really resonated for sure. Beth
Yeah,
Gibbons,
yeah.
yeah, amazing vocals. Yeah, yeah, very cool stuff, especially Massive Attack. Always had like a really kind of creepy. Mezzanine is such a brilliant album. I
Mhm.
pulled it out a while ago and I was like, wow, that was really ahead of its time. Like it still resonates to this day.
Yeah, for
So yeah,
sure.
yeah,
And it's great that they've achieved such like widespread acclaim too. Like they're really quite popular, and their live shows are really big too. But
yeah,
I saw Tricky, maybe like maybe 2018, not that long ago, and I
nice.
was really disappointed in the show. It was like,
Oh,
uh,
really?
yeah, it was kind of like what you might see happening if you went to like a show at like the Hard Rock Cafe or something. It was like a
Oh no.
really mainstream like blues rock sort of vibe. I was like, what is happening here? Like a lot of the audience left and I felt bad. It's like, I mean, it's cool when artists, change up their sound and
He's
experiment
really
with
changed.
different
Yeah.
genres and stuff, but I don't think anyone
But
was expecting especially, I don't think he had been super active, or maybe he had and I just wasn't paying attention. But anyway, we did not get the trip hop that we were expecting. Um,
that's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. That's yeah, weird.
okay. Well, anyway, do you want to talk about some more of your own musical influences? Like, what are some of the biggest bands that have had influence on you, or the music you make, or the whole musical picture, really?
Wow. That's a big ask because I don't like to put myself in a box. So I listen to like a wide range of things,
Hmm.
from classical to soundtrack music to um, old 80s stuff, obviously, which I think percolates its way into the Violentene sound. One of the bands that my brothers was really into in the early 80s was Japan. So I've always been a huge fan of David Sylvian and the whole vibe that Japan was doing. Again, I feel like those guys were way ahead of their time. And yeah, that so stuff that kind of stuff still has an influence on me that, to this day. Human League, Depeche Mode, New Order, A lot of the I do try to listen to a lot of newer stuff happening too, but to be honest, it's you get so involved when you're writing and creating your own stuff that at least for me, I find I kind of tune out what's going on. That's I guess I'd be a horrible DJ because like I really kind of zone out on the current things that are happening and I get really focused on what we're trying to do.
Mm.
So I don't, in some ways, I don't want to hear, or I don't want an influence of, with a lot of things that are, coming from the outside. I'm trying to, elaborate on what's happening within us and bring that through the music, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, so when we're in the writing mode, when we're in, which is like all the time, I'm just sort of fixated on what we're doing, and I kind of zone out as far as what's going on out there, other than seeing what's looking at my phone and keeping up on Instagram and obviously Bandcamp. And there's a lot of great new stuff that I love. Stuff like Leathers, Nuovo Testamento, um, Wingtips, the list goes on. There's so many cool newer artists that I think, like us, are drawing from older vibes and trying
Hmm.
to bring it into, current times to give it like maybe a bit of a fresh take.
Yeah. So, on that note, do you want to tell us some of your current favorite bands? I mean, you just listed a couple, but like, what is the stuff that you were listening to the most of other bands?
Currently, like I say, the leather stuff is great. Shannon's
Yeah, you
voice
literally
and
just answered this question
yeah,
in
no, but
advance.
Birthday Massacre have been around for a long time, but their stuff is amazing, and they're local too. Like they're a Toronto band, and yeah, I love those guys. Um, Wingtips, awesome. Um, yeah, like lots of like underground obscure stuff that I've never really heard of. There's so much good stuff out there. Yeah, I don't want to list like a ton of like newer bands, but I guess you kind of get the picture.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you listed a local band too. It's always good to mutually support each other. Um, so let's talk about your music a little bit more. Can you tell us like some of the general themes of the music? Like what do you like to write songs about?
Um, so the way the process works for me is like I'm inspired by sounds and vibes. So oftentimes I'll just sit down at the keys and start plunking away, creating sounds, creating patches, and I find that whole process very inspiring. I'll turn on the computer, I'll just start recording, and oftentimes something interesting will come of that. So sounds and soundscapes will, generally inspire me. And then after that, I'll come up with a bass line, a drum beat, and then the song will grow from there. And once I have a skeleton of a basic structure, I'll hand it over to Mary Jo. And so she has carte blanche as far as creating vocal melodies, lyrics. I tend to not really try to impose, anything as far as maybe like a title will come to mind if there's a certain vibe to a song, but I don't want to impose too much on her so that she has free creative reign, to create the vocals and create the melodies. And then she'll do her thing, and then two or 3 weeks will go by. She'll shoot a demo back to me, and we'll cut it up. We'll figure out the vocals. And then we sort of like do this back and forth process um, until the vocals are finalized, and then I get into the mixing stage. And that's sort of how the songs evolve. But as far as like themes and vibes, a lot of it is focused around sort of emotional, mental health, um, stresses, anxieties, and challenges. It might, probably from living in a crazy, chaotic world that we're all trying to make sense of. So we're trying to make sense of that, that chaos that's going on out there too. and we're trying to process that. And so a lot of the themes are are revolving around, mental health, stress, anxiety. Um, Thin lines, is referring to walking a razor thin line between, losing it and staying on track and try to navigate your life and stay sane.
We're going to talk about each track a little bit more later. Sorry, my mic was muted for a second. Um, but yeah, so we'll dive into each track on the Human Drama EP in terms of like, how you made it, what it's about and everything, here in a few minutes. So don't give us too much on those tracks. But I just meant like,
Yeah.
general themes behind your music, which it sounds like you have a couple.
Yeah.
Um, so does Mary Jo usually write the lyrics?
Yeah. She writes basically, I'm going to say 99% of the lyrics, song
Okay.
titles. Yeah. And yeah, that's definitely her realm. And I didn't really want to impose on that. Very occasionally I'll come up with a title that might direct, the focus in a certain way, in a certain direction. But yeah, otherwise it's all her.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, so if you're just joining us, this is one half of the Canadian synthpop darkwave duo, Violentene, and we have Roland with us here today. But there is another member who is not here today, Mary Jo, who does the vocals and, as we just talked about, writes lyrics, and possibly other stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh yeah, yes, there is some other stuff. Yeah, she plays piano too. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
occasionally there's some musical input there too. But mostly it's vocals, melodies, lyrics. Yeah, that's her gig.
Cool, cool. So a little bit of piano as well. All right. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your other influences in art, like say visual artists, films, literature, anything like that, that also impacts what you do in music?
Yeah, as far as yeah, movies and art, yeah, again, like a lot of things, a lot of varied things. I love a lot of sci-fi. I love a lot of classic horror, um, both in film and literature. Um, Blade Runner is, if we're going to talk film, that's still probably one of my all-time favorite films.
Yeah.
It just never gets old. It's like, again, one of those things that it's timeless. You can watch it, almost 50 years later now, and it's still kind of mind-blowing.
Hmm.
Um, David Lynch is always like ranks high for me. Like, again, brilliant. David Fincher, David Lynch. He's done a bunch of brilliant stuff. David Lynch, just for being who he is and just being so out there and bizarre and effed up. And I just like, yeah, that's yeah, his visual style has sort of always been a bit of an influence, maybe in the music as well. And the music, Twin Peaks, all that kind of stuff has always been incredible to me. Um, as far as literature, I dig a lot of like old 18th century fiction. But I don't, I have to admit, full disclosure, I don't read as much as I'd like to. And again, just because it's time, it's just, I feel like I have zero time between work, making music. And it's like, the last 10 years, I've been reading more, hardware manuals for this stuff than actual, emotional, literature. So
Hmm. Okay, cool. Um, Do you want to talk a little bit about your own technical setup? Like, what are some of your most essential gear or any gear you actually want to talk
yeah,
about? Some people kind of like to keep this stuff under wraps a little bit, but it's up to you really what you want to talk about. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, gear wise, like I was alluding to earlier with some of the older analog synths. So yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff that's like circa 1980 to 85, some Roland, no affiliation sadly. A couple bunch of Roland synths, a bunch of Moog synths,
I was actually
sequential.
wondering that if your name had anything to do with the brand. It is your actual name.
it is my actual name. Yeah,
Okay, just
yeah.
making sure.
But I
I
wish
was
there
like,
was
that
somebody.
seems awfully coincidental to be like a synth player and also be named Roland, but that's cool.
Yeah, and then like to actually like play the gear too, like and I love all the Roland stuff. But yeah, sadly there's no affiliation and no endorsements. So maybe one
Oh,
day that would be a wonderful thing. But yeah, just and some of the old Moog stuff is so cool. The stuff behind me here is like this is all like the live rig that we, if we do get out and play live this year, this will sort of be the heart of that system. What else can I tell you? And then everything else is like within the box and the computer. Um,
hmm.
I didn't want to build a system that was strictly in the box because it just felt like it didn't feel organic enough to me. And I really like hands-on, twisting knobs, moving faders. And that's the beauty of like a lot of the old gear is it's very tactile and it's a little funky, like things go out of tune, things break. And sometimes that's a good thing because it's limiting and it forces you to think, in a different way. But so what I've got going here is sort of like a hybrid system between like old analog stuff and current, in the box, high-end computer software plugins and a DAW. So I'm, yeah, sort of trying to bring both worlds together.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for budding producers or musicians on how to get started? Just any general life advice or yeah.
That's a great question. I would just wow, wait, how to get started? I would try to not get hung up on there's a big obsession with I find being on forums and like looking at a lot of sites and gear stuff. Like when you become a tech head, like it's really easy to go down that rabbit hole of I need to buy everything I can. And oftentimes like you only need a couple pieces. Like you could work with a hardware sequencer or a laptop, one synth, and a bunch of plugins if you're just getting started. Or you could do everything within, in the box with a bunch of freeware. And there's a lot of amazing free stuff out there. So I feel like um, get a couple pieces, learn them really, really well, and then exploit everything that's possible within that piece of gear and milk it and get everything you can out of it, whether it's a drum machine, a synth, or a piece of software. And but I mean, most importantly, I think you just have to explore your own inner world and your own what you're trying to say musically. And that's the rest will follow, I think.
Nice. Yeah, it's a little rough out there, isn't it?
It's
Uh,
really rough. So
for everyone, even like well-established artists, just
it
rough
totally is.
all
So I
around.
mean, it totally is. But I think the important thing is about what are you trying to say? What are you trying to express rather than, how much gear you have or, obsessing about getting a certain kind of gear. It's like I think almost feel like if you can't write that song on an acoustic guitar and a vocal, there's something missing, like there has to be a core of something interesting happening. And so to go down a rabbit hole of like, buying gear and like, getting lost in that it can be problematic for sure. And I think that's what I was alluding to earlier is like you have to define a bunch of limitations and kind of work within those, and focus on, what is it you want to say and what is it you want to create as an artist ultimately.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I always just try to focus on, you know, my internal motivation for keeping on basically and not the numbers, not, the actual financial success of anything. If you do that, it's going to be pretty discouraging pretty fast. Especially, I mean, in like, the underground scene, where there's not a huge audience potential automatically, you're automatically limited by just limited interest in like these genres, which all we can do with that really is just, work together to make them better known. and develop bigger
Exactly.
audiences. So
Exactly. You can't be focused. You have to be focused on whatever the art is and whatever it is you want to put out and express. Because I always feel like it comes out almost sounding fake if you're looking at, I want to write a song or I want to write an album that's in this style, but it's not really me. But I want to do this because I think it's going to be big. And ultimately, it'll probably fail. You've got to do something, you've got to do work that's honest, I think, and the rest will follow.
yeah, I mean, I don't have much of an opinion on like, people making pop tracks because I know they're going to be big. I know that in some genres that sort of mentality might work, but there's no faking it in stuff that is very niche and underground and very like historical in some aspects with the influences. You've got to do your homework to get here, and
Absolutely.
yeah, it just has to come from a genuine place. So,
Absolutely.
uh,
And I think the public also sees, excuse me, sees through things that are really contrived, and things that are maybe like heavily influenced from other people. Sometimes it works, and then sometimes it just sounds like, oh my God, we've heard this before. And hopefully that's not the case with our stuff. I try to write from a place that's sincere and doing something hopefully a little bit different. But yeah, that's all you can do because it's with streaming now, it's like you can't do it for financial gain. You've got to do it for some kind of artistic, personal interest, really.
mhm.
Because the quarters of pennies that you're making from Spotify and these kind of services is like it's really ridiculous. It's painful, really. So, but I don't want to go down that hole.
Spotify,
Uh,
that's this whole other conversation, right?
yeah.
And then
I don't want to open up
they've
a
been
can
in
of
the
worms.
news recently too for like funding like an AI military company or something. It's just like how could we make this even worse? Like just pile on
Yeah,
more
yeah.
stuff.
It's just yeah.
Okay, so do okay, does Violentene play live shows?
We haven't yet. That was the goal when I connected with Mary Jo in 2019 was to get out and play. So it hasn't happened yet. It's that is the goal, and hopefully we can make that happen this year.
Okay.
And the reason mostly has just been schedules and timing, because we're both working full time still,
Mhm.
and life being what it is. Yeah, we just haven't been able to get out there live yet. But so it's been
But
more
that
of a
is a
recruit.
goal.
It is the goal. Yeah, because we both played live in other projects like fairly extensively. And so we both miss it, we both love it, and there's a real buzz about playing live that you can't really get from any other medium. So it's definitely something we want to do, and we're curious to see how we can project it as a duo and hopefully make it work and be interesting live too. So yeah, we want to take it out of the studio and get on stage this year or in the near future, definitely.
Cool. So there's no immediate plans for any live shows, but a goal for next year then?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I'm pushing as much as I can for sure. And it's tricky because we're getting a lot of offers like over the last several years from promoters
Hmm.
and
Yeah, I'm sure that a lot of people ask you to play shows.
yeah, so it's hard to turn down the offers, but then they're coming in.
Hmm.
So hopefully we can fulfill them and get back out there and do something live soon.
Yeah. So on the topic of live music, live shows, do you want to tell us perhaps what your most formative or one of your most favorites, or perhaps there's more than one that you want to talk about, live experience in music as an audience member, like what your favorite show was basically, or if there's a couple that are up there and you can't pick a favorite, that's okay.
Wow, yeah, that's tough. Yeah, there's been so many good
Whatever
shows.
comes to mind.
Oh
Yeah,
my
I know.
God, yeah.
For most of us, it's
Um,
like cycle through the catalog of a zillion shows.
Yeah, and it's tricky. Like Ottawa gets a fair number of good shows, but
Mhm.
often it's a bit of a travel situation. So the more underground shows tend to go to Montreal or Toronto.
Yeah, yeah.
So it becomes a bit of a travel thing. But I think recently, like I'm just trying to dig through like the last bunch of years where we've been able to experience music again. Ladytron has always been huge for me. So I saw them. I've seen them maybe 4 or 5 times, and they've always been a big influence and live as well. They just hit sort of check all the boxes for me. So Ladytron, Drab Majesty, I've seen a bunch of times in Montreal.
Mhm.
Again, sort of like this astral, trippy, crazy experience. Um, who else? Peter Hook and the Light always do like an amazing live show. Um, Zeno and Oaklander came through town a couple weeks ago, and they were again amazing for two people. Just like this wall of crazy modular synth sound and awesome vocals. They
Uh,
were good. They were
I've
brilliant, and there was maybe 25 people in the
oh,
venue.
what? Wait, where was that?
That was in Ottawa.
Oh,
I'm
in Ottawa.
exaggerating. Maybe there might have been 30, maybe 30 people but like nobody knows them
Oh
here. But
no.
I've seen them again, but I saw them with Drab Majesty in Montreal and then saw them here, and I knew what to expect. So I
Well,
was
Ottawa's
upfront.
like a smaller city as well, right?
Yeah, it's a small market, so
So it's always
it's
going to be
cool.
smaller unless,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
a special set of
Um,
circumstances comes together. But I just actually I put up the Zeno and Oaklander set for Strict Tempo back in the Strict Tempo archives on the new Strict Tempo
yes.
YouTube channel. Shout out. I've been slowly kind of going through the first live stream sets um, that were recorded like the early pandemic days and archiving them there. And Zeno and Oaklander, I was lucky enough to host them in like May 2020. It was one of the first shows I did. And I watched their set again recently because I just archived it. And yeah.
Thanks for reposting that, because I went back and watched it again. I
Oh,
think I
yeah.
saw it initially and was like, oh my, this is so cool.
Yeah, they did a really good job. It was like
Yeah,
very old school, like vintage cinema. I think it
yeah.
got archived on Ubu Web, so it's got that like real film cred, you know. But
And it looks,
um,
I think they shot it in the rehearsal space in Brooklyn or something too, right?
yeah, yeah.
Looks like,
It was
yeah,
definitely like DIY done right, It was like
yeah,
very artistic still. But yeah, they had all sorts of different camera setups in the room, and
yeah.
Liz was like controlling some, I don't even know what she was using, some device that like moved things
Effects
around. It
and
was like some
yeah.
old school thing. But yeah, they did all the visuals live too, and that was fun. Um but oh, when you said all the the synths, I was just blown away by all the table full of wires.
stuff stuff
And
everywhere. And
yeah,
I was nerding out, and before the show, the camera like taking
so
pictures
many
like,
different colors of wires.
oh, and yeah, and it's just like I got some close-ups of Sean's modular rig, and it's just like
Uh,
this wild, crazy spaghetti mess of like multicolored cables. It's like, wow, if anything ever went wrong, I wouldn't,
yeah,
I
it's
couldn't
definitely a
imagine
spaghetti
this,
mess.
the stress of like trying to patch all this stuff live, and shit's going on. It's like, oh my God. But they make
Yeah.
everything sound great, as you know, obviously. Yeah, they were
Yeah.
wonderful.
It made me wonder
And
like how long that took to set up too.
yeah,
It's
yeah, and really,
so many cables.
yeah, and really nice, sweet people as well, just like down to earth, super cool, sweet individuals.
For sure. Um, okay. So, now I think we're going to, unless there's anything else you want to talk about before we get started, with the
I think,
listening portion.
no, let's jump into it. Yeah,
We're
all
going to
good.
listen to the Human Drama EP now, which was Violentene's last release. You're working on another release. Let's talk about that for a second. I think I saw
Yeah, for sure.
like a social media post the other day where you're working on the next, is it an album or another EP or?
Yeah, I guess I can spill
And
the
unless you don't want to talk about it yet, that's okay. If it's still
no,
under
no,
wraps.
I feel like we don't need to keep too much under wraps. So yeah, we're gonna do the typical cycle of, initially we'd thought about getting out a new single in October, November, but it was too tight to get a music video ready. So we've got to shoot a video for the next single still. So we're gonna probably do that early 2025. And it's all gonna be exteriors, so we're gonna be battling like -20 Ottawa winter outside to
Oh
get music
gosh.
video. Yeah, it's crazy here in the winter.
Is that
Um,
Celsius or no? No, that's
no,
Fahrenheit.
that's Fahrenheit. Yeah,
That would
so
have to be very cold in Celsius, right? I don't
yeah,
know.
-20 Celsius. Yeah, Fahrenheit. I don't know.
It's
What would that? Yeah, I have no idea what that would be in Fahrenheit. Zero, minus 1. I'm not
oh,
sure.
it is Celsius. Okay,
Yeah, we're all metric here. So, but the bottom line is, yeah, so we need to get our act together, shoot the video, edit it, to coincide with the single release because we didn't want to like release the song and then do the video, 3 months after. We want everything to fall in line nicely and simultaneously. So the title of that next single is going to be Savage City. And we're hoping to release that in March, going out on a limb here, March or April of 2025. And then the next EP that we're getting there. We've almost got 5 songs together for the next EP, which is going to be called Victims of Light. And we're
oh, okay.
aiming,
We got a name. Ooh.
we have a name, and hopefully that's and realistically, that probably won't be out until like if we do 2 or 3 singles, do that cycle, then the EP drops probably like fall of 2025. I'm guessing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like you have like a longer process for releasing, and you really, you make all the music videos, you do all the pre-release singles. So you build a lot of hype, and that's good. I did notice
Yeah,
I was kind of surprised that the Human Drama EP came out only in October 2023 because I had remembered seeing like some of the singles and everything, maybe like, the previous year. So I was like,
yeah,
that just came out. Oh, I thought that came out a while ago.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
you successfully
yeah. There's a bit
hyped.
of yeah. We're maybe not as prolific as like some people where they're you see some folks releasing stuff almost monthly, but I don't think which is great. I mean, not to dump on that, but I don't think we could ever do that. We tend to work at a I don't want to say a glacial pace, but like a slower pace. But hopefully the quality makes up for the slowness. But we want to do it right, and we feel like, well, there's no pressure. So like the only pressure is whatever we impose on ourselves. There's no like record label breathing down our neck saying, you must release this next month. So we take our time.
Yeah, I don't think many probably like independent record labels are like that. I guess mostly like the big leagues where they give you a
Yeah,
lot of rules. But I don't
yeah,
know.
anything
I guess
goes,
that
right?
probably
So
depends. But yeah, I mean that I wasn't trying to like, be like, "Oh, that's slow" or anything. I'm impressed with
oh,
the slow burn promo game, really, is what I was trying to
I
comment on.
no, yeah, no, full admission. We are definitely slow, but it's okay. It's okay as long as it's good, I'm okay with that.
Well, I mean, I think it's unfair to compare yourself to like artists who are maybe like producing in genres that it's much easier to churn out material fast for. Like I know a lot of like techno producers that are just like bumping out new tracks like monthly, and that
Absolutely. Yeah.
a lot of that is because they're producing alone. They're a lot of them are just building the tracks in a DAW. They're not using a lot of live equipment. So it's like, yeah, it seems like your process has a lot of different components, and a lot of collaboration with
Yeah, and that
multiple
absolutely. And
members
that's what
stands
yeah, and
out
that
things
takes
out.
time. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And like I've done some instrumental stuff too, where it's like, yeah, if it's just you plugging away at stuff. But then I would listen to it back years later and go, wow, it doesn't move me that much. Maybe because there's no vocals or maybe because I don't know. I feel like taking some time usually yields better results, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I'd say that it's working out well for you. Like, there's definitely a lot of like single material in your tracks. Um,
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it.
like, yeah, they all stand on their own. It's like all killer, no filler zone here. So that's a good place to be. um, And for our at-home meteorologists, I looked up, by the way, earlier, what -20 degrees Celsius is -4 in Fahrenheit. So like
Okay.
34 below freezing in Fahrenheit, which is very, very cold.
Wow.
And I've never been in Ottawa before. I've never been in that area in Canada, only like the North Pacific Northwest zone. But um, I have been in like what's it called, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the dead of winter, so I know that extreme cold vibe, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah. It's
that's the coldest I've ever encountered, like in life.
yeah, the Midwest. Yeah, Midwest states. Yeah, it's brutal. Yeah, it's that kind of thing. But again, like with with anywhere with climate change, it's changing, and
Oh
we used to
yeah,
get
yeah, that too.
we used to get 10 feet of snow, and now that is not a thing. Now we get like maybe 6 inches or whatever. But
Oh really? 10
yeah,
feet before.
yeah, like I have pictures from my folks that and you look down the driveway and like all you see is white, just absolutely insane. But you have to, so when I was talking about the music video, you have to think of these things. If you're going to be shooting with actors outside and you've got this schedule and you want to do this in February, and you've got everything goes out the window because of weather and storms, and so yeah, you've got to make
Mhm.
contingencies. So yeah, hopefully we can get our exteriors shot when it's a little bit warmer.
Yeah. It is okay. So I moved to LA earlier this year, and I've never encountered such a warm winter in my life by far. It is 75 degrees and sunny right now, which is about 25 degrees Celsius. And it's been sunny like pretty much every day that I've been here, and about the same temperature. So that is kind of wild. It it's literally sunny every day here, so the rumors are true.
I'm moving, that's
Um,
it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining. I thought it'd be weird. It's like there's no seasons, but it's the middle. I
Yeah.
mean, middle of winter, and yeah, the sun is like beaming outside. I had to like kind of like shade my blinds a bit because it was too bright. There was too much sun.
Okay, nice. That's a good thing. Yeah, yeah. That's
Well,
awesome.
okay, so let's dive into the EP now, the Human Drama EP, which was officially released last October, like a year ago,
Yeah.
October. And Roland just told us a little bit about the next EP they're going to be releasing, which is due approximately like in about a year, you'd say, right? Can you remind
Yeah.
us sorry, what was that called again?
So the title that we're going with is Victims of Light.
Victims of Light. Okay,
Yeah.
nice. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing that once it's finished. But we're going to listen to, actually, we're going to watch the visualizer for the first track on the Human Drama EP now, which is Break the Silence. And this track also was the track that was remixed for the Strict Tempo compilation album. And we're going to listen to that remix in a little bit as well. But this is the original version of the track that was released on the EP. The opening track from the Human Drama EP, which was Break the Silence. And that was the track that I chose also to have remixed for the Strict Tempo compilation album. I'm a big fan of this one. I think it's like a really powerful track, and I love the melodic line in it and everything. I think it's just really well done. So
Cool.
bravo!
Thank
Do you want to
you.
tell
Thank
us a
you.
little bit about making this track? The story behind it. Anything you really want to share about it?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to jog my memory because I think the writing of that one went back to like probably a year prior to it coming out. So
Hmm.
probably would have been written in sometime fall of 2022. Um, yeah, so it's been a while, and then it dropped a year later. And yeah, it just felt like a good track. It felt like a strong one to release as a first single. And yeah, again, it's just one of those things that came together pretty organically from my end because I'm writing music. It came together pretty quickly, and I dropped it over to Mary Jo. She did her thing with the lyrics, vocals, sent everything back to me, mixed it, and that's how it came together.
Nice. So you'd say that you do the music first, and then Mary Jo kind of works with the vocal content and the lyricism
Exactly.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's generally how everything works. Yeah, it's like I tend to just go into writing mode and churn out quite a few songs. A lot of them, you know, end up not going anywhere. They kind of sit on the drive as half done or they don't feel right. And then there's, a bunch that go into like these have potential folder, and then I'll finish those off, send them off to her. And you sort of know which ones kind of work and which ones don't pretty
Hmm.
quickly. And then it's often a surprise when when MJ, does her thing and it comes back and it's like, oh wow, it just like it took on a whole other life as soon as the vocals are added, as soon as the lyrics are in there, it just becomes a whole other beast. And so, anyways, yeah, I think that one worked out well and came together pretty quickly, like within a couple months, anyways.
Yeah, yeah. So can you tell us? I know that Mary Jo wrote the lyrics for the track. Can you tell us a little bit about what it means, as far as your understanding of it? Um, like just like the
I can try.
themes. What is the silence we're breaking?
The silence in this song that we're both referring to was um, the silence in the walls between either people in a relationship or friendship or whatever kind of relationship that we've all been in where things are breaking down, we're not communicating anymore, and you just kind of reached this stalemate where things are feeling pretty crappy, and it takes one person or one of the parties to reach out and try and break that down and open things up. So that's essentially what it was about, is trying to break down those walls of like no communication, bad communication. I wanted to give a shout out to JG Outsider and you for connecting us and
Oh, for
him,
sure.
and because I feel like he did a really cool, amazing job on the remix. It wasn't what I was expecting. I didn't really know. I'd heard some of his other stuff and it was great, but I wasn't. I really didn't know what he was going to do with it. And I think
Uh,
he gave it a really nice, harder EBM dance floor ready, very danceable vibe, while still being like kind of ethereal and trippy. He kind of kept the core and then brought it to another level for the dance floor. So yeah, big shout out to JG.
out of curiosity, what were you expecting it to be more like?
I really didn't know. I had no idea. I knew sort of like having listened to some of his previous work that it might be definitely more danceable than the
Hmm.
original, more dance floor ready. But I really appreciated like the harder driving, faster BPM stuff. Felt really good.
Yeah. So I think that if we're just going to talk about the remix for a minute, sure, why not? JG Outsider is like a producer and DJ from Spain who did the remix on my compilation album, the Strict Tempo Volume 1 comp, which has 24 tracks and a pretty wide variety of genres, really. But I had it intentionally, a wide variety because I wanted to represent everything that Strict Tempo has represented musically and my own personal taste, which is pretty far and varied. So it kind of spans the entire spectrum of like dark alternative and sort of like the indie and electronic sound. Um, and I wanted to take tracks like yours that are a little bit more melodic and like more like 80s inspired and mix them with kind of like a more like I don't want to say more modern because I think your sound is modern too. It just has a little bit more of a retro
Oh, sure.
influence, but
Yeah.
stuff that's moving forward. I don't know how to say this. That doesn't, in a way that doesn't sound offensive.
No, 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 I totally
It's
get
a
it.
little bit more futuristic, I guess. I don't know.
For sure. For sure.
Or just like newer sounds that maybe aren't as retro inspired. Yeah. Okay,
Absolutely.
it makes sense.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so I want to take stuff like yours that is more rooted in the 80s sound and stuff that is, happening right now in like the underground, sort of like Berlin, electronic scene, and internationally as well. But
Yeah.
anyway, so he has done a lot of like 80s remixes and stuff that I've played in my DJ sets. So I had him in mind specifically for this track because I knew that he worked with post-punk sort of sounds and like,
Cool.
made danceable versions of them. So I'm glad that it worked out. So this seems like the perfect opportunity to listen to that track now.
Sounds great.
And it does sound pretty dramatically different. So hopefully you won't be too jarred by having like the same track twice on here. But so we're
All
gonna listen
good.
to the JG remix, JG Outsider remix version of Break the Silence now, which is we're cutting up the EP now just to listen to the remix. This is on the Strict Tempo comp. And then we're going to go back into the Human Drama EP. Okay,
Cool. Sounds good.
a little brief interruption here.
See like something
Okay, so that was the JG Outsider remix of Break the Silence, which is up now on the Strict Tempo compilation album, which I'm planning to do more of in the future. But I just released the first volume, which is 2 disc CD and available digitally as well on Bandcamp. I'm about to post a link to it right now. That's on the first disc, and it's actually the first track on the first disc because I really liked it, honestly, and that's the reason why it's the first track. So I just thought
Yay.
it was a great intro track, which I guess you thought so too. I didn't notice that was the intro track to your EP as well, but it just has like a
Serendipity.
good vibe. It's a good introduction to the sound that I was trying to present in that first disc as well. So um,
Cool.
just a good intro track.
And
um,
a fine compilation it is. I have to say you did a lot of work and you really pulled together some really some cool and diverse artists and sounds. So congrats to you for pulling it all together. I know it
Thank
must have been
you.
a lot of work, a lot of time and a lot of work.
Yeah, it was definitely a learning experience. It was the first thing that I had done like that. I mean, I'm used to working with a lot of different bands, producing the online shows and everything. I had to, um, coordinate a lot of different stuff from people from everywhere, but this was kind of on a different level because I was also coordinating a lot of the remixes that were on it as well. Like a lot of the artists didn't know each other. Um, so it was like just like a leap of faith for everyone, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it worked out. Congrats.
Yeah,
It's very cool.
thank you for entrusting me to uh, you know uh, suggest. I mean, everyone gave their approval or whatever of the remixer that I suggested, but I appreciate the faith. Okay, so do you want to tell us any more about this track before we move on to Thin Lines?
Um, yeah, what else can I say about break? I don't know. I think we kind of covered most of this
Yeah, we
one.
just listened to the same track again, so you don't need to say anything else.
No more
Um,
remixes of this one.
no more? Oh, you mean
None
I won't
planned.
play another one. That's it. Okay, so the Thin Lines, you actually recorded a music video for it. Do you want to talk a little bit about the music video before I play it for everyone?
Yeah, sure. No, it was a pleasure to put this one together. Sometimes these things can be pretty stressful and difficult to pull together, but we pulled together like a really cool crew of some people that I knew from work because I worked in film and TV for a little while as a lighting person. So I knew some cinematographers. So the guy that we that we pulled in, Alexi Zaville, was a friend from work, and he did an amazing job. Carrie Duguay was the lead actor that we found through a friend of a friend, I guess was the connection. And she'd
Okay.
done some modeling and a lot of photography. So that was a connection with her. And then some other local friends of Mary Jo's filled out the crew. A really good friend of mine that I've known since I was like a kid, Steven Cito, did the editing and the visual effects. So it was it was a really quick turnaround, crazy schedule, but it was probably like the most fun I'd had on set in like years. It was very cool.
Okay. So this is a, friends and coworkers vibe. You
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
reeled everyone in for the project. That's really
Just
cool.
yeah, it was like totally DIY, no budget, just self-funded.
Uh,
Um, everybody lending their talents and their equipment and their time to pull it
mhm.
together. So yeah, it's always fun to work with friends and knowing you've got like 6 hours, we've got to do all this stuff in 6 or 7 hours or until we lose the light and everybody's burnt out and tired and wants to go home. So
Yeah.
but I think it worked out. It was a lot of fun.
Nice. So we're gonna watch the music video now for Thin Lines, which is the only like proper like full length music video for this EP. Break the Silence, which we just heard, was a visualizer, which is kind of a different deal. It's a little bit more of just like a a lyric
Exactly.
visualizer. I
Yeah,
don't know how to explain the difference between a visualizer and a music video. I feel like people already know what that difference is if they know
yeah, it's a
they
bizarre,
watch
yeah,
music videos on YouTube or whatever. Um, but it's kind of like a more minimal music video, really. It's like a visual accompaniment, but it's not necessarily like, following like a story with a full production
exactly.
team
There's not a
and,
narrative. Yeah,
actors and stuff. It's a,
exactly.
yeah, downscaled music video where there's just visual
Kind of a
images and
quick and
stuff.
dirty way of getting a video out without like
Yeah,
doing all the
right.
other stuff.
I mean,
Yeah,
I personally think that any visual accompaniment with a track is going to be better than just throwing up the album cover with the sound. So,
agreed.
I think visualizers are great, for what they are. You're not going to be able to have the full effort and time, budget, whatever, to do a music video for every single track. So,
Yeah,
I-
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
okay, so we are gonna watch the music video for Thin Lines now. Okay, so that was the music video for Thin Lines from Violentene, and we're here with Roland from the band talking about the EP right now, Human Drama. This is the second track on that EP and was also released as a single. Was this the second single for the album or
It
EP?
was, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so Break the Silence was the first single.
Yeah,
Uh, how,
exactly. Yeah.
how far apart were these released? Just out of curiosity.
It was like it was a longer stretch between than intended. It was almost a full year.
Oh wow, okay. That is a longer than usual stretch between singles.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Was
a
there
big
any
stretch.
special reason for that?
I think it just took us yeah, no particular reason. It wasn't a strategy. It was just the
Things
time
take
that
time. Okay.
things take time. The shooting, the editing, that took a couple months to pull together. And then we thought we might release another single prior. And then we realized, no, let's just do the single and the video for Thin Lines together. And even though Break the Silence was like 10 months prior or whatever. So and then in the interim, we were writing all the other songs too. So we wanted to be able to present the video, the single, and then drop the EP a couple months after. So there was a bunch of other stuff happening in the interim as well. So
Um,
yeah, not by design, but just by lack of time, I guess.
okay. You said that you were thinking about releasing another single instead of that one. What track was that?
I think the other one that was kind of we were floating around was maybe Never Fade was kind of on the list to release as another single. But then we realized, well, we're gonna have to do another music video for that, do all the promo for that. So we pulled that back and we settled on just doing Thin Lines, not doing another single, and then doing the EP directly after Thin Lines. So
Hmm.
rather than waiting around for like the Christmas season and then New Year's, so we just thought, okay, let's just all get it out before the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think Destiny Unknown has a lot of single potential too. So
Actually, that's
re-
true. Yeah.
really just your EP was just, so killer, no filler. It
Oh,
could have
thank
all
you.
been singles. So I think that's a feat on its own.
Thank you. Yeah,
You
sometimes
could
it's
have
hard to
turned it into
know.
a full album where people might have wanted to, skip a track or whatever. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's true, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
You kind
yeah.
of condensed all the fluff that people kind of generally fill in with to like perhaps produce a full album. Not everyone, but some people it's kind of like they just want to get to that number of tracks versus like they really think every track is like a really like standout, thing. So
I agree. Yeah,
that's good.
and yeah, that it's come up a couple times for us too, where we thought like, do you want to do a full album? But I think the length of time, because it does take us a little longer to get things happening and rolling, like to put together a full album of 10 tracks, there would be a huge gap between releases. Like it could potentially be a year to 2 years. So we didn't want to do that. So we kind of feel like the EP thing is the way to go. And like you say, it condenses things into a nice 5 or 6 songs that all feel really good.
And that's also useful in this sort of like limited attention span age that we're in. That's very, like sort of TikTok minded. Everyone's used to saying the 10-second, you've got like 2 seconds to impress someone or they're going to flip to something else. And it's
Yeah.
not as long form as things used to be. So, I mean, if you look at, how people listen to music online in general, I mean, looking at my mixes, there's always going to be like regardless of how good the later stuff in the mix is, people are just going to start tuning out at some point because um, they're doing a lot of stuff. There's all sorts of reasons for it. But even in the terms of like an album release, though, like always the first few tracks are going to get the most listens, regardless of how good the rest of it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So by reducing the number of songs, you're actually, increasing the chance of success for each track itself for actually reaching people. So, and that's what you want in creating music, right? You want people to listen to it. So,
Exactly. That's the
I
premise anyways.
I think
Yeah.
I think it's a good strategy.
It's a good strategy. And then yeah, or the other strategy is just to never bring anything together and just release an endless string of singles. But I think
Which
it
some
feels
bands also do. And
yeah,
it's also valid with the way things are going with the streaming like culture that we're living in now.
Yeah.
Um, which I could, that could be its whole separate episode. Um, but
And I don't think
yeah,
anybody's really got the answer. At least I don't. I wish I did. You just want to pull people in whatever way you can. But I think it's nice to have a package where, and even some kind of physical release, whether it be CD, vinyl, cassette, whatever. I think maybe I'm old school that way, but I think it's nice it feels somehow more special to have a collection in a format that's tangible. Whether, and even if it's digital, at least, to pull together all those singles, which is kind of weird because if people have already downloaded or purchased those singles or streamed them, then, you know, they already have them. So to pull them together is kind of a weird thing, but yeah, I don't know what the answer is, to be honest.
okay, so we're gonna listen to the next track, which is called Never Fade.
Yeah. Another one that like I think I'm just trying to jog my memory. I think I wrote that one in probably 2022 music anyways. So yeah, that one been kicking around and wasn't really quite sure how to finish it off. I handed it off to Mary Jo when it was like 75% done. She came up with the melodies, vocals, and then I was able to get some inspiration from what she was doing. Finally, pulled the rest of it together like a couple months after that, and then it went into the folder of like here are the tracks that we feel good about for the EP, and then there was a couple others that were in there, but we felt like okay, like this was probably a good one to include in there as well.
So you were considering releasing it as a single as well, but didn't want
That
to
was
release too many singles.
yeah. I mean, it would be great too, but it's just it would have been great to do like probably three singles, or if we could have done all of them as singles. But then the
Hmm.
question is, what's going to draw people to buy the EP in the end if they've heard all the singles or have downloaded the singles or streamed them? Is there any incentive? So I don't know. It's a question mark, like what's the better promotion marketing technique. And but it felt like okay, it felt like a strong, solid song to have in the EP, even regardless if it was a single or not. And again, we just didn't have the time and the to pull together a music video for it. So we
Hmm.
just felt we'll just keep it as an EP track on its own.
Yeah. I mean, that question of like what actually people drives people to buy something, support the artist directly versus stream it, that's a big question, because streaming has just monopolized so much of people's listening habits now.
Exactly. Yeah.
The only people, I mean, a lot of the only people that are buying, uh, you know, works directly from the artists are like just more educated about how the whole system works. A lot of people use their streaming apps; they don't realize how toxic of a whole system it is for the artists that they're listening to. Um,
Exactly.
so I think, yeah, the biggest way to get people to buy things is just to educate them about how the whole thing works and how that's really the most and really only sustainable way to support the artist in that sense.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and that's the thing, if people want to have that artist around and be able to produce in the
right,
future, there has to be
right, right.
some kind of support. And yeah, it's unfortunately streaming has become such a convenient thing that people are and basically almost free, if not completely free. It's
Hmm.
become too easy. So yeah, I think yeah, you nailed it. It's like education, and then you hope people make the right choice. And
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think
you
it for
know,
at least right now, it's especially difficult for a lot of people. So they're having to cut out sort of discretionary expenses too,
this is
and
true.
that might be in the don't need category. So it might sort of push them into the not paying category, even if they understand how things work and how if they'd like to support the artists. A lot of people aren't, actually able to. Um,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
I think
No,
ultimately it's
you're right.
important for the art, to be heard. But yeah, I mean, how are artists going to continue if they don't have any, viable support? Um, for many people, it's just not possible because, it costs money to make music. So a lot of
Yeah,
people
exactly.
conveniently forget about that. Like gear is very expensive, it costs money
Yeah,
to host it on streaming services. All of that has an expense tied to it. So
absolutely.
this is your PSA, everyone.
Yeah. If we ever get to a place where streaming will be equitable again, but it feels like we've reached that point of no return. But like, yeah, again, that's a whole other conversation.
Hmm.
But
Well,
um,
I'm glad that there's more conversation about it happening in general, so a lot of artists are standing up to it. They are speaking out about the, lack of fairness and the payment distribution models and how the Spotify
100%.
CEO is like, I don't know, making just way, way too much money and profiting off of the lost income of artists. It's just like mass
Yeah,
exploitation. So,
absolutely.
um,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. Well, Okay, so Never Fade. We're talking about your track right now. Also another track with great single potential. Um, so the next track on the album, oh, Never Fade. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we also didn't really talk about Thin Lines, or Never Fade, like sort of the behind, like inside scoop of like the story behind the tracks. So like, what are they about? You know, like the lyrical content or the idea behind them.
From what I gather, because sometimes
I know you
sometimes
didn't write the lyrics, but from what you understand of
well,
that, you know.
and sometimes the from what I from the vibe that I always got from this track, and again, Mary Jo might have a different take if she was chatting about this right now, but it
Mhm.
always felt like the loss of a love or a feeling of nostalgia and losing that. There's a sense of loss, I think, to that to the lyrics in that song, but I think sometimes I think what's cool with her lyric writing is there's a certain ambiguity, so that it's not always clear cut, and it's not always super defined as to this is clearly what it's about. I think it's kind of cool that it's a little open ended at times, and so the listener can derive their own meaning from some of these lyrics, I think. So I think it's cool to be a little ambiguous, and I feel like this is one of those where it's like, okay, the listener can kind of pull whatever they want out of the meaning.
Yeah, okay. Um, cool. Well, let's dive into the next track, which is Eyes of the World.
Save me from a systematic
This, as I recall, this was one that I think I wrote probably like early on in the pandemic, like around early 2020. And again, the music had been kicking around for a while, and I wasn't really sure what to do with it. And I think it'd been like we probably wrote it before Otherworld, so it had already been kicking around like, you know, a couple of years at least. And then I realized it probably had some potential. And I like for some reason, I like the title kind of evoked some kind of cool imagery for me. Sometimes I'll just have like random ideas for a cool sounding title without any kind of notion of where it's going to go lyrically, but it's kind of seemed to fit the vibe of the music. So I passed that off to Mary Jo, and she did her thing, and yeah, I think it worked out. It's one of my faves on the EP for sure.
Yeah, it's got a nice melodic synth line in there.
Yeah, it's one of the more laid back, sort of chill tracks, I think, on the EP for sure.
Hmm. Okay. Well, if you don't have anything else about that one, we'll dive right into the last track, which
Okay.
is Destiny Unknown. And I think this is one of my favorite tracks on the EP personally. I really like this one. I'm actually kind of surprised you didn't release this as a single, but I guess we all have our own favorites.
It's hard to judge your own stuff, I think, and be subjective or objective about it, I guess. But yeah, I think you're right.
Yes.
It could have totally been a single. And yeah, maybe it'll need like a remix treatment in the future. Who knows?
Interesting.
There's potential. Yeah, no, I really like this one too. Yeah, it feels
Definitely.
good.
Okay, so we're gonna listen to Destiny Unknown now.
Outside the walls are closing.
big thanks to Roland for joining us here for this listening party and interview. Do you want to talk a little bit about that final track?
Yeah. Like you say, yeah, probably should have been a single, but who knows? Maybe a remix in the future to to try and get it out there a little more, because people may not know it even exists unless you've listened to the full EP. But
Hmm.
yeah, that one felt good too, and it was kind of born out of a non-synth part. I think I came up with that one on guitar, which doesn't feature a lot on most of these last couple EPs. Like the guitar is sort of buried if or not there at all. So this one is a little bit of an outlier because it's the guitar features a little more noticeably, I guess, and it was kind of the driving force of the music. And again, like lyrically and emotionally, it comes from a place of not knowing what's coming, not the stress and the anxiety that not knowing what the future holds in life for any of us, and just trying to grapple with that and try to make our way forward as best we can was sort of the impetus for the lyrics and the emotional vibe behind it.
Yeah, I really like. Well, I already said that I really like the track, but reminds me of Destination Unknown, which is a band, or sorry, it's a song by Missing Persons, the like
Yes,
80s new wave band from LA.
Del Vazio.
They were from LA, right? I know they had
Yeah,
the track Walking in LA. I assume that means they're from here.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No, they're yeah, they were cool. They were yeah, definitely an influence for sure. So a little bit of a tip of the hat there in the title for sure.
Yeah, I like the 80s new wave vibe of that one too. And I think the guitar works really well too. And part of the reason why I said that I would like would have liked to or would like to see it as a single, I guess, personally, is because I think that people really respond to guitar driven music and Darkwave. I think the synth stuff is a little bit more niche, I guess, for a lot of people.
Yeah,
When they think of like goth adjacent music, they usually think of guitars by default, a lot of them.
I
Um,
agree. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I mean, the synth stuff is rising, definitely. And I think that depends a lot on what type of genres we're talking about too. Like the dark wave post-punk stuff is does have a larger audience than a lot of the EBM industrial stuff, but um, yeah, I don't know. That's a whole big other subject we're not going to go
Yeah,
into.
no, I
But
try to bring. I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, and I was born out of that too because like being a big fan of like Robert Smith and Cocteau Twins and stuff like that, and that more guitar driven, chorused out, reverb, lots of delay. Um, that's where I came from before I came into synth. So it's like I've always had that like inner struggle. Is it going to be a synth song? Is it going to be a guitar song? And sort of trying to balance those two worlds. So I tried to do that a little more with this one, but it's always a bit of a struggle. Which one will be the winner, or can they coexist nicely within the same song, or within the same like collection of songs? I think it can. It can be tricky for sure to make it all work, and especially when you layer vocals on top of these things, there's a lot of competition for space. So sometimes you
yeah.
have to play. It can be a production challenge for sure. Which way you want to go?
Hmm. Yeah, it's always a competition for space, and more busy layered styles. A lot going on.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
but I personally embrace the fusion of both the guitar sound and the electronic sound, and that's part of my whole brand. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I think that they could work well together. But I know
I
obviously we're talking
agree.
about like on an individual like track by track basis, whether all these elements can fit in the track that you're working on. But I'm all for the cohesion of these things together.
Yeah,
Something,
I agree. And like to me, the end result is what it's got to be about. It's like if the vibe is met from all these various and dispersed, elements, if it all comes together and the objective and the vibe is met at the end, then that's kind of the ultimate goal.
Yeah, somebody has a question for us here in chat. We've had a very uh, lurky, quiet chat, which is fine. But somebody's got a question for us. Well, I have my own answer to this, but I don't know if you'll have any thoughts about this. So there are some synthwave elements to your music, right? So somebody says in the chat, is synthwave really a genre, or is it just synth pop that younger people renamed? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I'm looking at the question, trying to formulate a viable answer.
I can go first if you want.
There might be some truth to that. I mean, there's so much flux between, what's in a name and, putting things in boxes. Yeah, I don't know. A synthwave, is it just synth pop younger people rename? Maybe, possibly, or is it just another label? I don't know.
What's in a name? Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
so I think that synthwave is kind of a complicated concept that is sort of multidimensional across various forms of art. So if we're just talking about the music genre, it really relates to all of the aesthetics that come along with the entire like synthwave brand,
yeah,
So
yeah,
you got all like the 80s neon inspiration. You have like a
yeah,
very specific look. And a lot of
yes,
people associate that with um, I think it's just kind of its own little universe beyond just a music genre,
yeah,
It's like an
definitely.
aesthetic um, genre of its own. Whereas synth pop, I mean, I guess you could say a lot of genres have their own aesthetic, and like look to them too. Um, but synthwave feels like a very like specific, complete package in terms of aesthetics.
It really
Um,
does.
and I
Yeah,
think I think it is different than synth pop as well, because if we look at the origins of synth pop, it's coming from post-punk. So that is basically what happened when like sort of the post-punk bands and the new wave bands in the early 80s decided to incorporate more synthesizers into the sound, and then it sort of became synth pop as its own thing. Um,
absolutely.
whereas synthwave, as we think about it now, is really a more modern creation of sort of a repurposing of 80s aesthetics. Um,
Yeah, there's that huge nostalgia that's
mm,
involved in it. Everything's neon, everything's a sunset. You've got to have like a
yes,
Lamborghini in
like
there,
yeah,
or
the cars driving and
yeah. So
the
there's
sort of
that. There's a really
cyberpunk
yeah,
cityscapes.
yeah.
Well, the background I've got here is actually it's a little bit synthwave.
Yeah,
It's
I think yeah, I think there's like a real strong and there's really cool things that are happening within that genre. But yeah, I think it's like you say,
mm.
what's in a name? I think it's just
I
another
think
way of
they're related, but I don't
yeah,
think that they're necessarily that similar in terms of like musical origins. Synth pop is kind of like I see as more of a historical point in time where it sort of branched off and there was a widespread availability of synthesizers in the 80s, right? Oh
yeah.
my God, cat.
I think
Yes.
he might have the answer here, but he's not talking right now, so
Me, full blown music history lesson. Oh, cat.
yeah, he got brave and
Way
decided
to
to come out.
distract me.
He came out of his hole. Um,
What's her cat's name?
this is Wiley. He just calls it electronic music, so electro.
Okay. Yes. Well, your cat is also correct. I mean, you can talk about it in like, big umbrella terms or more specific sort of like hyper subgenres.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I think using big terms to describe sounds and aesthetics and everything is sometimes important too, because um, you want to bring people in on something that they know they might like, but they don't know that they like something more specific underneath it. They might know that they like goth, but not know that they like all of these, very specific subgenres of it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
anyway, but what you were saying about synthwave, basically synthwave is like an 80s just like appropriation of the culture. I mean, it's sort of like, I don't mean
Yeah.
appropriation in a negative sense necessarily, because I think a lot of synthwave is cool, but it's just taking a lot of those aesthetics and really just like, just going hard on them essentially with some sort of elements of the music, this basically the overarching like um, sort of synth music of the 80s, and not just synth pop also, I think it had more influence from other electronic genres too, and became a kind of
Yeah,
its
they
own
just
thing in
yeah, and
more recent years. So it's not it's not necessarily an 80s genre at all. It's just like sort of what a modern look back into the 80s, what people might, idealize that as.
yeah, it's an idealistic, almost
Anyway.
nostalgic, and they just chimed in and said it's often more instrumental too, and maybe a little less vocal.
Oh,
So
that's true too. Yeah.
so a lot of
Yeah.
instrumental, a lot of soundtrack
Less like
inspiration.
rock influence in general.
Yeah,
So I mean, if you
yeah,
look at like
exactly,
Depeche Mode, that's all very, very vocal, song driven.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
Using Depeche Mode as kind of like a very quintessential example of synth pop, for example.
absolutely. Yeah,
Anyway,
but
it's,
like you say, yeah, it's one of those conversations where you can go down so many rabbit holes and so many subgenres and micro genres, and um,
mhm.
yeah, it gets a little funny. I try not to think about it too much because it's like I don't know, when creating or writing, it just feels like you just have to write in a way that feels good to you and not try to label it. And I think most people when they're writing music would feel the same. You just want to put out what feels right to you without any, putting any kind of label or putting it into any kind of box. Otherwise, you feel like you're pandering towards that thing, and I don't think, at least I don't want to have those kind of limitations when I'm putting stuff together. You just want to do your thing and hope it feels good.
Yeah, and I do remember seeing in your bio somewhere that you did have some synthwave influence as well. How would you say that comes out in the music that you produce? Is it some more in like the cinematic elements? Because that's how I perceive it when I listen to your music.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, and just because that's what people are calling it now, so it seemed like maybe a good adjective to throw onto it, but it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's the cinematic element is sort of what's driving that for
Yeah.
sure.
I think so. What most people think of as synthwave now is that very specific image of what we were talking about with the palm trees, the neon lights, the cyberpunk city. It's the sunset images with
Absolutely.
a very you know just like very specific sound
Yeah,
that's like
absolutely.
cyberpunk influence, and like it's outrun, and it's got all this very specific stuff associated with it. But
Absolutely.
before this genre really took off and became its own thing, synthwave kind of meant something else entirely. So I used to host like an 80s underground radio show, and I labeled things synthwave all the time, speaking about different types of music entirely. So I was
Okay.
talking about, sort of like the wave adjacent genres of the 80s. So like what we're now calling darkwave, but wasn't called darkwave then. So basically
Exactly.
the wave subgenres of post-punk and the synth versions of those. And that's what I was calling synthwave, like 10 years ago,
Right, right.
before this new like synthwave one word genre came about. So I think that there's also some confusion there because it can be used to describe different things as well. It has been used to describe different things.
Yeah, it gets
Sort of like
confusing. Yeah.
the synthier version of new wave, which is what I used to call synthwave before synthwave became its own thing, and then calling it synthwave became confusing for people because then they
Absolutely.
associate it with the new version of synthwave.
So many
So
labels, right?
this is a complicated conversation, but
Yes. And
because
I don't have the answer either.
I was playing a lot of electronic music, a lot of early synth, like post punk, essentially, like the the first fusions of those sorts of sounds on that radio show. And we were calling it synthwave, because it was like the synth version of new wave, or sort of those post-punk adjacent, like minimal wave, cold wave, all that stuff. So
All the waves.
yeah,
So,
it's all the waves, but like the synth version. So yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
now
yeah.
now it's its own thing. So yeah, long tangent about synthwave here at the end. Um, yes, you're welcome. Also love Electroclash. Um, and if you're a Ladytron fan, you probably do too.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Another,
well,
yeah.
unless anyone has anything else for us, I think that's a good place to wrap it here. Um, do you have anything else for us, Roland?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time and having me in and to chat about this stuff, and hopefully getting it out to some new ears that maybe not be aware of us or what we do. And yeah, really appreciate it. And again, thank you for the remix, pulling that together with JG and the wonderful compilation. And yeah, hope to see you guys, everybody out there soon with the new material in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. Big thanks for joining us. And you can also check out Violentene's Bandcamp page and support the artist directly. We know that's important, right? If possible.
Please.
I just checked their merch. I'm on their site right now. They have CDs still for Human Drama and Otherworld, right? And it looks like they have a couple T-shirts available as well. So
Yes.
lots of good merch to be had up there. Shouts. And yeah, I hope that the new EP comes along well, and I'm looking forward to hearing that when it comes out. Can you remind us of what it's going to be called? Sorry, you've already said
Uh,
twice.
so yeah, it's going to be called Victims of Light,
Victims of Light. All right.
and the first single, when we get that single and the video together in early 2025, that is going to be called Savage City.
Savage City. Okay.
Savage City.
That actually
Bit of a
sounds.
synthwave
It's
kind
it
of.
speaking of synthwave, it sounds kind of synthwave. Well,
Could
I
be.
think
It could be.
the cities like cyberpunk cities, so it's like
It's got that aesthetic for
essential
sure.
visual image, which I guess I planned out this conversation appropriately because I have like a visual from the game Mirror's Edge behind us in the video,
Yeah, I love the
um,
backdrop. Yeah, it's very cool.
which is very cyberpunk.
Yes.
Um, but I thought it was, because there's some sort of like futuristic, ethereal elements to your music. That's why I picked it. But anyway,
Okay.
okay. Big thanks to Roland. And shout out to Mary Jo, who couldn't be with us today, the other member of this band. But yeah, I thought we had a lot of great conversation in there, and I hope everyone enjoyed it as well. You can catch this up on my YouTube channel later, up on the Vox Sinistra channel, and at some point later, also the Strict Tempo channel.